Okay, welcome. Oh, that's loud. Welcome all. Can you hear me at the back there okay? Yes, excellent. Thank you all for joining us again this evening. I'm just going to quickly run through a couple of bits of housekeeping before we get started this evening. Just to firstly say welcome. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you managed to get some food and some drinks. If you didn't find the drinks, they're just round the corner behind the lockers there in the fridge. So the format for this evening, we've got a couple of speakers that are going to be coming up and sharing their knowledge and experience with us. Could I just ask that your mobile phones are on silent, just out of respect of the speakers, please? You're welcome to have food and drink here, but please do clear up after yourself. There are a variety of bins over there. There is Wi-Fi available. YGuest and Yoti goes green as the password. I think that's a nice... Maro's not in the room, is he? Nope. So, just out of interest, who's here for the first time this evening? Excellent. Well, welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us. Just to make you aware that Gary, over the back there, with the camera, will be going around taking photos. If you don't want to appear in a photo, please do let Gary know. We'll do our best to obviously ensure that you aren't, you don't appear in any photos that are shared publicly. So, your hosts for this evening, myself, Dan Maybe. I've got Diane, but unfortunately Diane's not actually here with us this evening. Gary, as I mentioned, at the back there with the camera, waving his hand at the minute. And Paul, where's Paul? Doing the washing up. Excellent. If you have any questions, any thoughts, any feedback, any ideas, then do come and have a chat with either Gary, Paul, or myself this evening. Very happy to answer any questions that you may have. Just before I go on, I just wanted to say a very big thank you to someone. Gary. Gary has been with us since several years now. 2017, 2016, 2017. Gary is going to be stepping down as an organiser for WP&UP. I'd just like us to all please say a huge thank you to Gary. He's given so much to WP&UP over the years in terms of time. He's contributed in various ways. If you take a look at the website, take a look at wp&uk/gallery, you'll see hundreds of photos which this man has been responsible for, quite a large percentage of them. He's stood up here, he's given talks, he's been his MC for the night, and he's done an awful lot in the background, trying to organise speakers, help with venues, sponsors. There's quite a lot that goes on in the background. Gary is now stepping down and progressing into been some time into a new role and obviously focusing on that. So I just personally like to say a big thank you to Gary. Please appreciate if you could all give him a big round of applause. It does mean that we have the option and availability for somebody to step up and come and support WP&UP. If you're interested, there are quite a few ways that you can get involved. We have quite a lot going on. There's quite an exciting time. We're going to make another announcement a bit later on, which we will share some more details about. But it does mean that if you are interested in supporting WP&UP and WP&UP in some way, then please do let us know. Please have a chat with Gary, Paul, or myself this evening. These events are made possible by WP&UP. It's a charity that supports and promotes positive mental health within the WordPress community. WP&UP is supported and sponsored by Green Geeks. They are a company that offer fast, scalable and eco-friendly hosting. The event is also sponsored and supported by a number of other companies, as you can see over here. So we've got Plesk. They power and simplify and build, secure and run web apps and websites, simplifying the life for sysadmins and SMBs with web ops and hosting. Hosting crafted with care, SiteGround also offer expert support with 24/7 expert support, hosting crafted with care. And WP Engine, digital experience platform built for growth. And our sponsors, Weglot, the WordPress multilingual plugin. Translate and display your website in multiple languages. If you take a look at WP&LDN.UK, you will see there is an option to translate the site. That is powered by Weglot. I'd also like to say a big thank you to the venue this evening, Yoti, giving us a place, giving us a home for the event. It's a digital identity platform. If you're not aware of Yoti, if you're not aware of what the services offered, there is a WordPress plugin. Have a chat with Murrow at the back there. If you have any questions about Yoti, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them. We're also supported by a number of companies donating time. Blue37, Paul Smart, and Sotic this evening, offering live streaming. If you are out there in the live stream world, hello. Please do be aware that we are live streaming the events this evening, so if you don't want to be in front of the camera, just want to make you aware. So on to tonight, our speakers. We've got two, as I mentioned, we've got two speakers. Tim Nash is going to be speaking, talking about security, and Chris is going to be talking about headless WordPress. But before we go on to that, as community announcements, just an opportunity, if you're aware of anything that's going on in and around the community, it's an opportunity for you just to let us know. Maybe you're looking to hire, maybe you're looking to be hired. It's just an opportunity to stick your hand up and just let us know, really. So has anybody got anything, anybody aware of anything within the community?
Thank you. Hi. So we, Mindsize, are hiring for a couple of different roles. To check, go to mindsize.me/careers. Otherwise, come and talk to me and I can sort of help you with any questions you might have about them.
Excellent, thank you. So that's Mindsize. Anybody else got any announcements?
Hi everyone, I'm Chris Skitch from Didgeridoo. I'm going to WordCamp Europe in 3 or 4 weeks' time. It'll be my first time. At this stage I'm going on my own. So if anyone else is going, let me know. And oh, good stuff.
Hey, whole room full.
So yeah, we can all say hello and have a beer over there. Prost or whatever they say there.
Excellent. So, who was going to WordCamp Europe? Excellent. Who was that? Third of the room. Fantastic. So, any other community announcements? Yes.
Yeah, we're also hiring. We're looking for a WordPress developer based at our agency, Berkhamsted, so only 30 minutes north of London. And if you go to indigotree.co.uk, you can see the scope of the role on the website.
Excellent. Indigotree.co.uk. Anybody else? Got any other announcements?
WordCamp Brighton is in August, and they they are also, they've announced call for speakers just in the last day or so. So I'll be sticking my one in there, and if anyone else wants to speak, then yes, you can sign up too. Also, WordPress leads. Are you going to mention that too? Well, we've done it now. Okay. There's no hard date for it, but it's in October sometime. That's all I know.
Excellent. Yeah, WordCamp Brighton. So that's the, when are we? Date 16th to the 18th of August. Anybody here?
Been, it's a very, very good event to go to.
Microphone. Yes, as Paul said, if you've not been, it is a fantastic event. Really, really friendly camp. We're very fortunate in the UK with the camps. They are just incredible events. This one is £35 a ticket for a 3-day conference. Yes, I said £35 for a 3-day tech conference. If you've not been to a WordCamp before, really highly recommend looking into them. They are very accessible, very friendly, very open, welcoming events that enable us to do what we're doing here, but on a much, much larger scale. My personal favourite, just the hallway track, just doing what we've been doing this evening, just chatting, talking through and meeting with friends and building relationships, really. I think WordCamps are a fantastic opportunity to be able to do that. So if you've not been before, this is the next UK WordCamp. There are several others going on. The next big one is WordCamp Europe. So that's happening the 20th to 22nd of Europe. 20th to 22nd of June, even. Happening in Berlin. So there's around 2,500 to 3,000 tickets have been sold. So it's obviously on a much, much larger scale than anything we see in the UK. Anybody else aware of any other WordCamps going on? Nope. Okay. Just going to mention a couple of other things. WP/Slack.uk. If you're not in the UK community Slack team, highly recommend it. If you head to this website, you'll be able to drop your email address in. It's an opportunity just to continue the conversations, really. If you want to make sure that if you're meeting with people this evening and you want to carry on that discussion, this is a great opportunity to be able to do that. It's not just London focused, it's UK. So we've got, I think there's about 1,000 plus members in there now. Quite a large variety of channels focused on location and events and other things such as dev, life, design. So really whatever you're interested in, there'll be somebody chatting about it in that Slack team.
Just to mention those that work remotely, there's a remote channel and there's normally most Tuesdays about 2:30, if I remember rightly. We have a Zoom or something. We keep trying to change what technology so we can just make sure that half the people that we didn't want can't make it.
It is absolutely open to all. Yeah, if you're interested, if you want to continue networking and building those relationships, it's a great opportunity to do that. As I mentioned earlier, these events are sponsored by and supported by WP&UP. We are in a, you may not be aware because this is a little bit US centric, but we are currently in Mental Health Awareness Month. Last week we were in Mental Health Awareness Week in the UK. I'm not sure why we can't get the two joined together and just work as one. But yes, Mother's Day. Through the month of May. We're in May, aren't we? Yes, through a month. We've been running a survey focused on the mental health and well-being of the WordPress community. We have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, before we close this. We are really, really, really close to getting 1,000 respondents to this survey. So please, if you haven't answered this survey, we would really appreciate it. It's helping us develop the services for the community, helps to ensure that we can support our community from a positive mental health perspective. And I'd really appreciate it right now if you could just take your phone out and hit wp&up.org/go. The server may crash, but that's not a problem. We'll soon come back. This is highly important. We are seeing some quite interesting statistics out of it already. And as I say, we've got 2 more days left before we close this. We will be making the data available. We will open source the data. It is fully anonymous, and it will take you 2 to 3 minutes to complete. If you have teams, please, I would really encourage you just to share this with your team as well, because it just means that we can have a greater understanding of the community's current state. Okay, before we move on, anybody else aware of anything they want to share within the community? Any other announcements? No? Okay, cool. So I'm just going to really, really quickly, because we've got 2 talks this evening, so there's quite a lot going on. So I'm just going to really quickly run through a WP update. It's just really what's been going on in the last month since we last met. In fact, it's been 2 months since I saw most of you. But we have had WordPress 5.2 update since our last meet. Release 7th of June. So, of course, we're all running 5.2, yes? There's definitely a mixed bag of heads nodding and shaking there. Jacko, the name of the name of 5.2. It was quite a sizable update. If you've not taken a look at it, there's quite a lot going on in there. We've had this little side project of Gutenberg holding things up a little bit for a while. And now we're starting to see some of these things come through that have been held up because of the Gutenberg project. Anyone ever faced this before? the white screen of death. You hit updates. Oh joy. You have no idea what's going on. PHP error detection is part of this. It was actually in 5. There was some elements to it in 5.1, updated in 5.2 as well. It's actually preventing us seeing, or helping prevent us see that white screen of death. It's a better way of handling the white screen of death, essentially. So it's allowing you to enter into recovery mode if you've hit update and there has been an error thrown by one of the plugins. It saves you seeing that white screen of death. Site health check has come in. So that's building on the work, again, that was released in 5.1. This adds 2 pages to help debug common configuration issues. Has anybody run the site health check on their site? Anybody impressed with what they've seen from the site health check? That's a mixed bag. Just out of interest, anybody fancy sharing why they've had a negative experience? Interesting. Yes, it's if you have the option to upgrade, why wouldn't you? I guess it's that logic. If you can upgrade to the latest version for security patches, performance improvements. Excellent. The scoring system makes it bad.
So it is actually almost impossible to get 100%. The only way to get 100% is to be using a default theme and only have one theme and then have everything else perfectly. So the whole idea was never to have that system. It was meant to be a traffic light, but there was never really meant to be a scoring system. And that sort of got snuck in. And now you get all your clients going, well, we're not 100%. I want to be 100%. Make me 100% because there's a button now that says I'm not 100%. It's Yoast all over again.
Don't use filters to display 100%. I guess there's an argument of should the client have admin access to be able to see these things. Yep. Always a difficult conversation. Conversation with clients. Yes. I think there's a whole conversation around just that subject, isn't there? Moving on swiftly. PHP version bump. So we have gone, hooray, from 5.2 to 5.6. Not 7 plus, but it is a bump. And a bump is a good. So if you are not currently running the latest version of PHP, are you aware of how to update your PHP? There are lots of reasons why people don't, and often that's the biggest barrier. Some people may not even be aware of PHP, just want a WordPress website. It's definitely worth, if you are not familiar, if anything we've just spoken about there is a bit garbage, doesn't mean much to you, take a look, speak to your host, see can you get your PHP version bumped up. If you're currently on 5.2, definitely speak to your host. If you can't make a change within your host, change hosts. Because you should not be sitting on 5.2, you shouldn't be sitting on 5.6. Get yourself to a 7 plus at least. You will see security improvements, performance improvements, quite a number of things. So there's been a lot going on in 5.2. There's a lot coming in 5.3 as well. 5.2 saw accessibility updates, new dashboard icons. Anybody looked at the new dash icons? The new icons come in? There's this weird dog-looking thing with a pole running through it, and I'm not entirely sure what that's about. We've got plugin compatibility checks with the PHP version and compatibility with the plugins. We've got the new WP body open hook, and we've got privacy updates coming to 5.2. So if you're not currently running 5.2, again, recommend get onto your sites, make sure they're backed up, an update. But that's enough from me for now. I'm now going to hand you over to Tim. Tim joins us from the 34SP.com team this evening. He's going to be giving the final outing of this talk. So we are going to please give Tim a big round of applause for Come to the Dark Side. They have cookies. And whilst Tim's just finishing the setup there, speaking of changing hosts, if you can't update your PHP version, do come and have a conversation with this man later on. If you are having problems with PHP updates, he can help.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Wow, you're all quiet. Oh, there we go. Okay, so as it's been mentioned, this is the last time this talk is coming out to play. It is a talk mainly designed for conferences rather than user groups. So hopefully none of you have... There's a couple of people who will have seen this before, and I'm really sorry if you have. It hasn't changed from London, so if you were in London and you saw this talk at WordCamp London, go get yourself a drink and some more pizza. I won't be offended. For everybody else, these are 4 cautionary tales, and that's all they are. They're just examples of things that happen. Each one is based on real events. Things have been tweaked for narrative purposes, and obviously do not have client data all over the place. But they all genuinely happen the way it's described. Now, when I give security talks, I'm known for being a bit making people feel worried and scared, and quite often we can dwell on the really bad stuff. What could go horribly wrong? And the reality is, what is the worst that can happen? And if we start looking around and we look at people like British Airways, who 2 years ago managed to have all their customer credit card details just stolen. Do they still fly their planes? Are they still in business? Yes. Equifax lost everybody's data on the planet. Do you still give them your data? Yes. Should you? Probably not. But that's a separate point. Normally, the NHS managed to lose whole systems and get locked out with ransomware. Again, we still have an NHS. You will suffer horrible, horrible financial problems. Or maybe not. You will probably suffer some reputational damage. But in many cases, even the worst case scenarios that I'm going to describe today are relatively minor. You should still go home and go to sleep. It will be stressful for a while, but that's okay. Stress is part of life. I really don't like this mic. Every time I breathe it. Anyway. Yeah, I can't do that because then it doesn't work because it's a really good mic. So, we'll start with the first tale, which is at 34sp.com's office. And it must have been a Thursday because we're going out for beer. There's a beer there, so that's how I know. And we get an email. Hi, we're going on to one show in about 2 hours. Do you need anything? Now, we're a hosting company. This is good. We like people who email us things like this. This is much better than the alternative, which is they don't email us. And then they wonder why we can't do anything. So when we get an email like this, the first thing we do is go and check that they're not on like £2 hosting. And if they do, we send the sales team to go and have a chat with them. We also do a quick performance check. We just basically throw a bunch of traffic at it to make sure that the caching is working, etc. And we also run a tool called WP Scan. We've got an internal version of it, which just means it doesn't leave our network. And WP Scan is a Ruby system, and you just do Ruby WP Scan.rb -- URL, give it a URL, and it comes back with a bunch of stuff. So it will give you a list of various headers. It will try and find different usernames. It will look for plugins that are out of date. It will look for themes that are out of date. Generally, just show you a bunch of interesting information. It also looks up to various CV databases to see if the version of the plugin or the theme that you're using has a known vulnerability. Our client has running a theme that has something called privilege escalation. That doesn't sound scary. What could that possibly mean? privilege escalations. Well, let's take a look. This is obviously really hardcore hacking. I don't want anybody to think that this is easy and trivial. It's not like I'm copying and pasting a URL. That URL at the top says, save options, user can register 1, and default role administrator. Now if we copy back out, and yes, we can now see at the bottom, we now have the register option. And, well, I'm pretty sure we can guess where this is going. Copy, paste, URL, and you now have a full administrator account. That is what a privilege escalation looks like. That's slightly concerning and worrying, right? It'll refresh. There we go. Why? Well, this is the genuine bit of code that was the cause of the privilege escalation. For the developers in the room, that really does say request. They really didn't do any validation or sanitation whatsoever. And then went key field, update option, key field. So you could grab any thing in the WP options table and update it with anything. Now, there are lots of people in the room who are going, I wouldn't have done that. I'm not that stupid. We've all written this code. I've written code, I didn't write that actual code, but I've written code that is almost identical to that. I've made that mistake. Everybody does it. It's just sloppy, and it's someone who didn't know better. But we end up in a scenario where this is on a live site, about to go on national television, and we have two sides of the office. One side is going, oh, I hope they stay up. It'll be really good publicity. And the other side is going, I hope they go down. Because if they go down, we can fix it quickly. So, my name's Tim Nash. I am the platform lead at 34sp.com. I'm a former pen tester. I also co-run WordPress Leads, or as we like to call it, WordPress London's bigger brother, by a whole week. I used to run a small dev agency, and I go around the country and I speak about security. The best way to tackle security is for education, supposedly, though it doesn't always seem to be working. So I go around, I give talks like this. I give practical talks as well. What can we take away from our little disaster? Well, there were a few problems. The first one, not using a child theme meant that we couldn't quickly update the code. Had they had a child theme in place, that code could have just been updated in a second. If you're not familiar with child themes, they're just literally, you can selectively update parts of it. If they'd actually checked the code, or at any point, they might have been able to spot that there was a problem. That's okay if you're a developer. It's not very helpful if you're just a general user. Having control of your WAF, which is a web application firewall, for them, this was the good side. We spotted it. We could easily put in a patch on the WAF that said, just don't, if anything goes to a URL that looks like that, just deny it, point blank. And get a disaster plan in place. Their disaster plan, when we asked them, what was your plan if this all went horribly wrong, was to said, phone you. I mean, we were an okay disaster plan, if I'm honest, but I'd like you to have a more robust one, please. Mainly, this is the reason why nobody but my boss has my telephone number. Let's try a different one. That was a nice sort of just general warm-me-up one. So let's go and have a more common scenario. A magazine hack. So this is a small print firm, very much mum and pop shop. They're using WordPress. It's on shared hosting. They don't have a dev team, per se. They just sort of flung it together. The important thing is they used to do print magazines, and they just moved it to the online, because that's where it all was. Now, as the bad actor goes along, they can use tools like WP Scan, and they can go through, hitting the, and one of the features is you can use word list, and you can say, hey, I found this admin username, throw this dictionary at it, and see if I can brute force it. Nobody in this room should fall for this. This shouldn't happen. Because if you're in a common dictionary, you've already been hacked well before this talk. So thankfully, just like nobody in this room should have fallen for it, they didn't. Nothing was found. So we enumerate through, we look at the plugins. There isn't anything on here that's vulnerable. That's annoying. normally something flags at least a little bit. But there's Jetpack. I like Jetpack. Bad actors like Jetpack. Everybody likes Jetpack. Jetpack's wonderful. Jetpack does everything. It's great. You can do the infinite scrolly stuff. You can get it photon and get cool images. It updates your plugins for you. It updates WordPress core. It does all of this stuff for you. It is like the biggest bag of tricks. So we start off with a little bit of just basic testing. So we can use something like LinkedIn. And this is just an intelligence gathering tool. So all we do here is go, hey, I've got this company. Tell me what their email addresses look like. And ideally give me some back. So now we've got a bunch of emails, and we know roughly what the email pattern looks like. So we go and visit the endpoint. So this is just the REST API endpoint. We grab the user data and go, OK, why are we doing this? There's some more information. Well, why we're doing this is because amongst that user data is the avatar URLs. This is Gravatar. Gravatar's a wonderful service. It's the one that shows you your little picture. You must have used it. Yeah, that big long string bit, that's an MD5 hash of an email. So now I've got a list of emails of the company. I have a list of usernames. And now I have a list, something to check against. Now I have an actual user and got their real email address, and I know it's matching, and I know what their name is. Now we can start doing fun things. And we can start with a very basic spear phishing attack. So this is your typical WordPress update email. Hey, please update your site, blah, 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 blah. Click here, blah, blah. We're all probably familiar with it. Now we change it to this. Please update your site, blah, blah, to updating with Jetpack installed is easy. Click this link. Link to my site, which is clearly jetpack-wordpress.com. Update, yeah. Click through, and you arrive on a page that looks like this. Put in your details. Clearly, this is not the Jetpack page. This is my nice little phishing site. You just say you put in your username and password, and now I own your username and password. The really sad thing is, for Automatic anyway, this is what WordPress.com actually looks like, and they do it all right. They do it mostly right. They've got loads of trust marks in there. It's a bit confusing up the top, the fact that it's WordPress.com brackets Automatic and get down the bottom Jetpack. But on the whole, it looks clean. It has lots of trust markers. They're doing everything right, except for the one small problem. If you self-host, you've never seen this page before. You're far more familiar with this one. So you were much more trusting to go through this one than you would have actually been through that one. And Jetpack does everything. Absolutely everything. Doesn't update WordPress core for you. Yet people were happily nodding along because Jetpack does everything. Now, if you're thinking, hang on a minute, no one falls for this. That was a spear phishing attack where we knew someone's name. We knew their username, we had their email, we could tie it all in neatly. This is just your bog standard spam. Every time a WordPress update comes through, we get thousands of emails like this hitting mail servers. This is what spam filters are dealing with every day. Hey, dear customer, your WordPress database is out of date, blah, blah, blah. Now, our spear phishing attempt was much more, well, it was better. Let's face it. We could spell WordPress correctly in more than one place. The fact that they use 3 different spellings of WordPress is in fact impressive. But we see this sort of email all the time. One of the interesting features with 5.2 is the shiny new protection system. It's really great because basically whenever you get a fatal error, it will send you an email saying, hi, you've got a fatal error. Click this link to log in. Bad actor. Oh dear. All I have to do is just do a DDoS. Costs a few dollars to take the average site out for 20 minutes. Sometimes that could be pennies. Small DDoS attack. Send the email, which is the fake phishing one saying log yourself, click here to log back in. Would you fall for it? You would fall for it. Hi, same vein, if you don't even want to try that. and you're a bit confident on the phone. Small DDoS attack. Hi, we're your hosting company. Yeah, your site's offline. Yep, I just need some credentials to get you back through. Do you mind going through authentication? Yeah. So your admin username is, and you've just picked, you already know that because you went on the REST API 2 minutes earlier, so you know what their usernames are. Yep, so your admin username is Bob. Okay. I just need the first, second, and third digits of your password, please. Cool, now you're 4th, 5th, and 6th. Yeah, thank you. Again, straight in. What can we take away? Number 1, never, ever click a link in an email, which is awkward. But never click links in emails. Any system should have some sort of flow to get you back to where you want. If you're designing a system and you're a developer and your system relies on them getting an email and them clicking a link in your email, your system is broken. Even if you provide that link, make sure you provide an optional extra, whether that's a code that they can put in on the site once they log back through, some mechanism so that they can make their own return journey, not relying on clicking on a link in your email. Otherwise, we train people to click links on emails, and we've just worked out that that's a really bad idea. We shouldn't do that. Enabling two-factor authentication. It won't stop really clever spear phishing, because obviously the next step is to go, hi, can I have your two-factor code? But it reduces down that window to almost nothing, making it exceptionally difficult to do and making that spear phishing a hell of a lot harder. With good two-factor authentication and a good password or passphrase, so a good password from a password manager or a passphrase, you are making yourself like 95% there when it comes to security of users. But we can go a bit further. Limiting admin users. If you do nothing but go back and look at your websites and go, who's got admin access? Oh, they don't work here anymore. That web company stopped working for us 6 years ago. Why does she have admin access? Why does he have admin access? Tonight, just go, remove all the admins, drop them all down to editors. See who complains. See how long it takes them to notice. When they do notice, ask them, what do you need it for? What were you trying to do? Can we code a better system around it? Having worked with clients who have done this, the answer is some people never notice. Likewise, if you have a boss who insists that they must be an admin, just create them a new special role, call it super duper admin. Set the privileges to, I don't know, subscriber level or better. Make sure that the required permission is that somebody has to okay it before it goes live. But yeah, dropping down your administrator users, try to make sure you have none or as low as possible. And this is a tech meetup. I don't need to tell you don't use the same password twice. Don't use the same password twice, ever, on anything. Even the most simplest things, just don't do it. Not just in life, just don't use the same password twice. Are we all happy? We haven't even got to the scary ones. Well, okay, we're getting to the scary ones. So, next little scenario. A children's charity in Watford. They have quite a complicated setup, but probably one most people in the room might be familiar with. So they already had an existing IT system. It's all based on Microsoft stuff. And they've got like an Exchange server for their emails. They've got SharePoint. They've got SQL Server for all their management of bits and pieces. And all of that is managed by their IT manager. Then they've got their website, which is the brochureware thing. And the IT guy, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. It's WordPress, you know, with a sneer at the end. It's WordPress. I don't do WordPress. Yep, we've met that person, haven't we? Yep. So they got third-party developers to do the site, but obviously it's managed by the marketing team. And when I say marketing team, I really mean one person who has the title marketing director. And she does absolutely everything on there. And it's your typical brochureware site. It's got a couple of interesting features. It's got a newsletter sign-up. and it's got a slider, you know, one of those carousel-y things that go round and round and round, and already there's size in the room. So if you haven't come across this instead of sending you down some really scary dark black holes, I'm just going to send you to a nice small one. The WordPress exploit framework, yep, there are whole tools dedicated to just hacking WordPress. Makes it so much simpler. And as you probably guessed by now, for those of you who are ahead of me in the game, there is a plugin called RevSlider, which has a terrible reputation, mostly undeserved. No, deserved. RevSlider is bundled with themes on popular theme foresty type places. And the problem with it is that, well, when was the last time anybody updated their theme? In fact, let's do a poll. Has anybody updated their theme in the last week? That's a remarkable number of people who put their hands up. I feel 2 of you are lying. But on the whole, people do not update themes. WordPress core just came out. Oh, people might update their themes. But on the whole, people don't update their themes. And because the people don't update their themes, they don't get the latest version of the RevSlider plugin because it gets bundled with the theme, not on its normal updater. Consequently, there's lots of really old versions of RevSlider which are incredibly exploitable. So exploitable that if you use something like the WordPress exploit framework and search for RevSlider, you get 24 results. You get to have specific ones by theme. And the theme designers were using Divi in this case. So we simply go and look for the Divi use of RevSlider. And then we can do something along the lines of use exploit shell, Divi RevSlider, shell upload. Set the website, set the payload to execute a command for us. And this is going to go ahead and it's going to put a web shell actually on the site and then run a command for it as if we had a normal shell access. So in this case, we're going to set command cat wp-config.php. Oh yeah, now we have access to the database. Good, good. Nothing scary here at all. Just the username, password, and database. Oh, that's interesting. There's some like DB host, and it's not localhost. That might come in useful later. Well, while we're here, we can also set command, and before with something like WP scan, we can get a list of like the most top 1,000 common vulnerable plugins. Nope. Now we can just say list all the plugins. Now I got much easier. I can start putting files on here, but this is more fun. Seeing the plugins and going, those 2 look interesting. WP-SMTP and ALO Easy Mail Newsletter. Neither of these have a particular vulnerability other than the unfortunate fact that they happen to be on this site. So what do? Well, WP-SMTP basically lets you set credentials for a remote SMTP server to send email out of. Anyone want to have as a guess where those credentials were? Oh yes, for that Exchange server. Now, if the IT guy had set this up, he'd have set up the SMTP so it would be locked down on a sort of no reply based email that couldn't possibly get access to anything. It doesn't do WordPress. Doesn't care about WordPress. Probably did after this, but he doesn't care about WordPress. So, needless to say, it's the marketing director's email credentials. Now, we can send email letter. This is fun. The other plugin, ALO Easy Mail Newsletter, that has a really cool feature which allows you to do bounce rates. And the way it does that is by setting up an IMAP address. So that when you send out the emails, every time you get a bounce, it would go through, it would hit the IMAP return, and then it would record it. Which means you needed some credentials. Oh yes, that would be her inbound email credentials. Now we can send email, and we can receive email as her. Now we can start resetting stuff. Now we can cause real problems. When I was said at the beginning, what's the worst that can happen? And we were just talking about a little bit of money. That's one thing. When we're talking about kids who are terminally ill, who are going on one last holiday, and now all their details are in public, their family's information is out there, just leaked quite happily. People who might be coming from abusive families, information about adoption, All that information just there. This is a charity now destroyed overnight. This could have been any one of dozens of sites. This could have been an NHS site. We could have suddenly got onto the N3 network. We could be turning off pacemakers. All because your little WordPress site happened to have a small vulnerability in a slider, and a set of cascading changes meant that all of a sudden people's lives were literally being turned off. Suddenly, what's the worst that can happen seems a bit more scary. That magazine site didn't actually tell you what they did. So it's a pink magazine, so it's a lesbian gay magazine. Not a problem in the UK, but when they shifted from being a print magazine to being an online magazine, they went from being a UK publication to a global one. Being gay in the UK, absolutely fine. Being gay in other parts of the world can lead to you being stoned to death. That hack went from, oh yeah, they lost a little bit of money, to people's lives at risk. Everyone here might have tendered for that site had it come up as a job. If you start looking at your client lists, none of them might seem controversial now, but if you start looking in the wider context, it gets quite scary. And ultimately, it was your responsibility. Do you want some cheering up? Oh, cool. The what for charity part, they don't exist. There were no kids terminally ill. Well, they're there. However, does anybody remember the Panama Papers? Yeah? That is the most plausible route for the breach for the Panama Papers. They had their vanity website all the way hops through. It's the most plausible way they did it. It's not guaranteed, but it's the most plausible. So it's okay. All good news. When it was Robin Hood and all the good bad guys were being hacked, it's all fine. Not so good if it's the goodies. What can we take away? Always keep things up to date. You will get developers who will say, I don't need to keep things up to date because I will manage them. That's great. If you don't have a life, don't want to ever go on holiday ever, don't want to go to hospital. Well, most people don't want to go to hospital, but bad things can happen. You have to keep things up to date. If you are not going to be in a position where you can put processes in place to guarantee updates happen in a timely manner, then you automate. It is better to automate and the automation to fail once in a blue moon than it is to not update. And the longer you leave not updating, the harder it becomes. To give you an idea from our own hosting, we provide automatic updates for WordPress core and plugins. Would anybody like to hazard the guess of what the failure rate is? And by failure, I mean a white screen of death or new protection mode, or an increase of more than 2% in warnings in the error log. Who would like to hazard a guess? I'll let you get 10%? Lower? Bearing in mind we're a company that likes to have business. 5%? 2%? 1? There's still no hands going up. 0.5%? Yes, there's a few hands going up. You're wrong, but well done. 0.4, thank you for putting your hands up. Yeah, well, you're not allowed to put your hands up twice. 0.3? Yeah, that's 3 times. 0.2? 0.2, 1 person. 0.1? 0? No, it's not 0. It's about 0.05%. So it's ridiculously small. To put this in perspective, we worked it out that if you, based on the average number of WordPress updates, on the average number of plugins on a normal site on our hosting, you should see a white screen every 7 years. I'm willing to take that on. And do you know, most of the white screens we see are 1 or 2 clients. As in literally percentage points is like 1-2% of our clients get the majority of the white screens. And do you know what? They're the ones who manually say, no, we're not going to do updates. And they set aside and say, no, I'm going to enforce WooCommerce not to be updated. Interesting, that. leave that with you. If you have a theme and have a plugin that's bundled with the theme, buy a license for the plugin and do it manually. There is nothing more to be said on this. If you want to go and buy these things, you own them. You own them for life, or at least the life of the product. You can't just go, yeah, we won't pay that license this week. Because I guarantee you this week's the week that there's a vulnerability appearing in it. And slightly more controversial, don't put anything in the database that isn't encrypted that you don't want people to know about. Like passwords. It's not a safe place. Assume your database is public knowledge. There are exceptions and there are ways around it, but on the whole, assume that your database, anything in your database can be got at. We've got one last one. So far, there are people in the room who think, I won't fall for any of this. I won't fall for a spear phishing attack. I'm not installing RevSlider, and I don't write silly code. I know you. Me too, I'm in that category, clearly. And so the final one is a small agency. They've got a WooCommerce powered site. It's got tens of thousands of customers. I'm putting hundreds on there just to lower their expectations. And these guys, they have a custom theme, all built through. They use a limited set of plugins. They know what they're doing. They're hot on security. They even have a couple of security plugins installed, various bits and pieces. They really do know what they're doing. And they go through, and they're doing some basic tests. You know, come back with things like all the various tests. Nothing comes through. The bad actor gets frustrated, but eventually spots a weird endpoint. Sitting in a style tag is a URL that looks something like that. And they think, that's weird. Now, up until now, whenever they've been trying any automated SQL injection techniques, using something like SQL map, it's been coming out blank. But just for a laugh, they hit that endpoint as well. So SQL map basically just tries SQL injections against any known endpoint. If you're a developer and you're developing code, I really recommend throwing SQL map into your automation tests. So whenever you have a URL that has any sort of dynamic input, you just pass the URL to SQL map and off it goes. Is that me being chucked off? So off it goes. So Python, blah, 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 SQL map in. It came back. But this site's got like a really clever security plugin that has a web application firewall built in. How could it possibly be coming back? All the other endpoints weren't. This isn't right at all. Until you go and look at the code. See, how this works is that because that's going to the direct URL, that's an actual PHP file it's calling in, it has to load in WordPress onto that file. So it's loading in WordPress so it can get access to the helper files. And before that, they put this wonderful thing in here, define short init true. Does anybody in the room know what short init true does? Yes, which includes no plugins or theme. Where was our web application firewall? Our amazing security oh dear. If you ever sat there and thought that a security plugin was going to save you, it won't save you from yourselves. That's a genuine piece of code that we found in a client site. They spent at least 2 weeks blaming us for their problem. I get to use them in presentations now, with their blessing. If you are going to use it, the takeaway really is simple. I should probably finish that with the SQL injection itself. And again, we're back to lazy coding. Would anybody like to hazard a guess as to where the ID is coming from? So what do we take away from it? If you write code, it is your responsibility. You own it. Doesn't really matter if you're handing it over to a DevOps team. Somebody at some point is going to come back to you and tell you when you've broken everything. Never, ever, ever rely on something inside your system to protect you. This is why we build external systems, for this very reason. And always check any endpoints for SQL injections. If you're writing an SQL endpoint, then you run it through SQL map or similar. Don't worry, we're at the end. There's just a few things to bear in mind. Security is literally everybody in this room's responsibility. If you've taken nothing tonight, then take that. It's probably your fault. And you need to fix it. Doesn't matter what you do as for a living, whether you're a content person, whether you're a developer, whether you're a sysadmin, it's still your responsibility and you still need to go and fix it. And just to leave you on a nice, happy note, a bad actor needs to be right once. They get an infinite number of tries at getting into your site. You have to be right every single time. Security sucks. And you're going to fail. Even the best will in the world, you're going to fail at some point. So take heart. The worst isn't terrifying. Mitigate, have a disaster plan, and come drown your sorrows in beers with me a bit later. Thank you very much.
Tim, thank you very much for that. And that's the non-scary version.
It genuinely is. At one point, the blacked out slides had children crying. And I had to cut a whole section for other reasons.
We do have time for questions. If anybody has any at all.
Hi, it's just regarding the WordPress exploit framework and SQL map. I did have a sort of play with both of those a while ago, and I sort of came to the realization that really to get familiar with them, I'd actually need an environment with some bugs. So
I would just go look at your code.
So I came across a couple of purpose-built sort of what seemed to be suitable candidates. One called BWAP, which is Buggy Web Application, and WebGoat. And I just wondered if you'd come across anything like that that's suitable for trying out these things and becoming familiar with them.
Yeah, so I've seen the WebGoat before. Honestly, I would be shocked if your own code base wasn't a good place to start. But in your case, it obviously was, and that's good. Well done, you. I'm also very fortunate I have tens of thousands of sites to try this on, which possibly gives me a slightly large base. There are some really good examples. So if you were first looking at this sort of things, one of the good places to start is Kali, which is a actual Linux distro VM system. So you can get it as a VirtualBox, which has a bunch of tools on it. More specifically, they have some really good training videos. And amongst that includes a couple of VMs of bad bug boxes. So that would be where I'd go and start.
And I presume that would be sort of suitable for SQL map, but WordPress specifically.
So at least one of their boxes is a WordPress box.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
But yeah, failing that, I mean, one of the greatest ideas is if you are sitting there and you want to learn about writing bad code, write some bad code. Test it yourself by writing bad code. The important part of that is you'll actually find it difficult, I hope. As developers, we're trained to not write bad code anymore. But try and force yourself to write some bad code. And if you can, maybe think about what that means for you.
Excellent. Any other questions at all?
Hi. You said keeping credentials in the database is generally a bad idea. Does that still hold true for things like auth tokens?
Depends what the auth token can do. But on the whole, if the auth token allows you to impersonate a given user or a given activity that's from the server, then probably. That said, fixing credentials is a task in itself. Because ultimately they have to be stored somewhere. So you are ultimately going to end up with a database somewhere. The idea of not putting it in your WordPress database is only useful if you can manage to make sure that the other database is secure. There are solutions, things like HashiCorp's Vault, which is a good solution for storing data generally, but obviously that's only really suitable for a more large-scale setup. For your average site, you have to toss up between is it easier for them to get access to the database versus is it easier to get access to a file system or a separated database inside there. A couple of scenarios is keeping your encrypted, either keeping things encrypted in itself, but of course then you have to put some sort of decryption key somewhere, which may or may not be back in the same vault. We've done lots of experiments for PCI compliance where we've kept the secrets on a separate host and we load them in at runtime. But then we have to load them into memory, and that introduces a whole new other set of issues. So there isn't a perfect solution. But yeah, in terms of the actual question, I would treat a token the same. And if you're going through PCI compliance, a token is considered exactly the same as credit card details these days. So that's a reasonable reason to not be thinking at least encrypting it, at the very least.
It's a scary little world, isn't it?
We don't like it when our clients just want to use the native PHP functions to send emails from the website. So we're always looking for solutions like third-party sending services like Mailgun and that SMTP plugin. What would you actually recommend as a good way of making sure emails get delivered, especially when they're to customers, without ending up with things stored within the WordPress database?
So you can set up Postfix or whatever you're using as your SMTP server on the local host. So ultimately, PHP Mail goes out to send mail, which is which is literally a shell script wrapper to whatever the mail service is on that server. So if you have access at the server level, you can be setting up that service to be going to Postmark or whatever the service you want to use is. Other than that, securing up your mail server itself that's on there is normally a good place to be. Yeah, but do it at the server level, not necessarily in the PHP application itself, where possible, which obviously is not easy to do always.
You talked about having something outside the plugin that handles the security or the WAF.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend? Mod security or?
I mean, most systems these days will work with mod security. Mod security is for small to medium-sized sites the sort of default position, and with the basic OWASP rule set, has a dedicated set for WordPress. It's pretty good. You can also use things like ASL's rule sets. You can either pay for them or put them back. There's some benefit in that, not much, but some. If you're on Nginx, Naxi is a different style of WAF, but it's also very effective. There are also many paid options. If you are going down the paid options route, they're nearly always proxy-based WAFs, so they sit in front either as a piece of physical hardware in your data center or as a third-party service. Cloudflare is a good example. In that scenario, just bear in mind that obviously you want to make sure that you're only accepting requests coming via your WAF, because otherwise someone will just walk straight round it.
Excellent, Tim. Thank you very much. I believe your slides are at timnash.co.uk/security. Thank you. Again, big round of applause, please.
If folks have questions, just come grab me. I am aware this is one of those subjects that people don't normally want to talk about in public.
Excellent. We are going to have a quick break now. I think we've finished all the pizzas, but please do help yourself. There's a bunch of swag up there. There may be some drinks still just around the corner. We are going to come back in about 5 minutes and have our final speaker of the evening. Thank you.